So if you've ever gone down a rabbit hole on the internet, you've probably seen those videos of like master sushi chefs in Japan.
Oh, yeah, the ones where they're doing that incredible multi-generational forging process for the knives.
Exactly. Yeah. You watch them take this piece of high-carbon steel to a whetstone, and they just begin to sharpen it.
Right, and it's this incredibly delicate art form.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, they pull the steel across the stone, they establish an edge, and then they move to, like, a finer grit, and they just keep polishing it.
Until the edge is just incredibly thin, right? Microscopic.
Exactly. Microscopic precision. I mean, they show it slicing through a tomato without disturbing a single seed or just, gliding through fish like it's passing through thin air.
It's mesmerizing to watch.
But, and this is where it gets crazy, there's this terrifying physical threshold with that kind of steel.
Oh, because of the molecular structure?
Yes. If you keep sharpening it, like if you obsess over getting it just a fraction of a millimeter thinner because you want absolute perfection, the edge becomes completely unstable.
Right, it gets paper thin.
Paper thin. And the moment you try to actually use that perfectly sharpened knife on a cutting board, the edge just shatters.
It chips or just folds right over on itself.
Exactly. So by trying to make the tool perfect, you have essentially rendered it completely useless. You've destroyed the exact instrument you were trying to optimize.
Which is such a brilliant metaphor for, well, basically everything we do today.
It really is. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today. Because, I mean, if you look around, we are living in a culture that is absolutely obsessed with the whetstone.
Oh, 100%. It's that constant pressure to do more.
Right. We're told we need to optimize our morning routines, we have to biohack our sleep cycles, maximize our daily output.
I know people who literally listen to audiobooks at 2.5 speed just to extract data points during their commute.
Yes, it's exhausting. We treat our minds and our bodies like that blade. We're just grinding away our margins in this pursuit of unending growth.
And we think we're being efficient, but we're actually just approaching that point of shattering.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore a completely counterintuitive approach to efficiency.
And to look at the actual physics of trying too hard.
Yes. We're asking this really strange question today. What if the ultimate shortcut to being highly effective, well-informed, and actually sane isn't about doing more at all?
What if it's about knowing the precise moment to put the whetstone down?
Right. And to figure this out, we are diving into an amazing source.
We're looking really closely at Stephen Mitchell's translation of Chapter 9 of the Tao Te Ching.
Yes, and when you place an ancient text like this against the backdrop of our modern hustle culture, the contrast is just, it's stark.
It really is. The core thesis of Chapter 9 introduces a concept that completely rejects that modern growth at all costs mandate we just talked about.
Right.
Instead, it advocates for what we can call dynamic balance.
Dynamic balance. Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, to understand this, we first have to completely discard the assumption that stepping back is somehow an endorsement of apathy or laziness.
Because that's what we usually think, right? If you're not grinding, you're lazy.
Exactly. But this philosophy is highly analytical. It's an acknowledgement of the point of diminishing returns in your daily life.
Like energy management and cognitive load.
Precisely. It maps out the actual physics of effort.
So I want to dive straight into those physical metaphors because I love that the text doesn't begin with, abstract metaphysical pondering.
Right. It starts with very tangible domestic objects.
Yeah, things that illustrate the failure of excess. So the first line reads, "Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill."
Such a simple visual, but so profound.
It is. When I read that, I immediately thought of the fluid dynamics of a cup of coffee.
Oh, yes. The morning commute from the kitchen to the desk.
Exactly. If you pour a liquid into a vessel until it literally crowns over the top, like it's held together only by surface tension carrying, it becomes a completely different physical task.
You can't just walk normally.
No, you have to freeze your entire upper body. You take these rigid, microscopic, shuffling steps.
And your eyes are just absolutely locked on the surface of the liquid.
Right, your entire peripheral vision just narrows down to this one cup. You are consumed by the terror of a single tiny tremor.
And the fascinating thing is that physical constraint you're describing maps perfectly onto systems engineering and queuing theory.
Wait, queuing theory? How so?
Yeah, so in any complex system, operating at 100% capacity guarantees a catastrophic failure.
Oh, wow. Okay, give me an example.
Let's look at a highway network. When a highway is at, say, 80% capacity, traffic flows pretty smoothly.
Right. Cars can merge, people can change lanes.
Exactly. They can adjust their speeds, there's empty space. Systems engineers actually call this slack.
Slack. Okay, I like that.
But the moment that highway reaches 100% capacity, it stops being a road.
It becomes a parking lot.
Yes. A single driver tapping their brakes creates this massive shockwave that travels backward for miles, and it just halts everything.
Just from one person tapping their brakes.
Right. The system becomes completely fragile because it lacks the empty space required to absorb minor disruptions.
Man, mapping that onto a modern professional's calendar is almost too accurate.
It's the exact same dynamic.
It is. I
Yeah.
mean, we treat our daily schedules like a game of Tetris. We're just trying to eliminate every single gap.
We book back-to-back meetings from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening.
Yeah, we schedule a conference call for the drive home. We block out exactly 15 minutes for lunch. We build a day that is filled to the absolute brim.
And we tell ourselves that this is the peak of productivity, right?
So we do.
Oh,
We think we're maximizing our time. But the reality is that a day booked to 100% capacity requires the universe to behave with mathematical perfection.
and the universe never, ever does.
It never does.
A meeting inevitably runs 5 minutes over. Or a client sends an urgent email that requires immediate triage.
Or your internet connection drops and you spend 10 minutes just troubleshooting the router.
Exactly. Now, if your calendar is built with 20% slack, if you follow what we can infer from the text as the 80% rule, that unexpected variable is just a minor ripple.
Right. You have the room to handle it.
Yes. You have the physical and cognitive room to absorb it, adjust, and move forward with your composure intact.
But if your calendar is at the brim, that 10-minute delay just cascades through the rest of the day,
You're late to the next meeting, which makes you flustered.
which degrades your performance, which then delays the tasks after that.
And by 2 in the afternoon, your bowl is just spilling everywhere, and you are operating from a place of sheer panic.
True efficiency really does require margin. That empty space in the schedule isn't wasted time at all.
No, it is the structural integrity of the day.
The structural integrity,
Yeah.
which brings us right back to the knife. Because the empty space provides the structural integrity, just like a slightly thicker edge provides the structural integrity of a blade.
Exactly.
The second line of the text reads, "Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt."
Which is such a paradox until you really examine it.
Yeah, we talked about the sushi chef at the beginning, but let's apply that metallurgy to knowledge work.
Let's do it.
In a corporate environment, we are constantly told to hone our craft. We need to refine our pitches, edit our reports over and over. It seems almost counterintuitive to suggest that improvement has a hard ceiling.
Well, the ceiling exists because of cognitive load and the nature of decision fatigue.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of the life cycle of a major project. Let's say it's a strategic slide deck. You spend days drafting it, you gather all the data, you structure the narrative.
You get it to a point where it effectively communicates the information.
Right, it's functionally sound. But then this underlying anxiety activates.
Well, I know that feeling.
You start to worry about a particular stakeholder's reaction, or you fear some obscure question during the Q&A.
And so you keep messing with it.
Exactly. This anxiety masquerades as diligence. So you end up spending an additional 4 hours tweaking font sizes, agonizing over adjectives, and just over-engineering the charts.
Oh man, I have absolutely fallen into that trap. You find yourself deleting a sentence, rewriting it, and then reverting back to the original sentence 45 minutes later.
Yes. Because the work isn't getting better, it's just getting different.
Just different. And frankly, the core message usually gets buried under all these layers of defensive nuance.
Because you're over-sharpening the presentation out of a fear of criticism.
Right, that defensive posture.
And that defensive posture is exactly where the degradation happens. The over-sharpening not only wastes valuable time and cognitive resources, but it actively harms the output.
You lose the forest for the trees.
You really do. The overarching narrative becomes convoluted. And furthermore, you delay the deployment of the work.
Which is the most important part.
Right. A perfectly polished project sitting on a hard drive provides zero value to the organization. A functionally excellent project that is actually delivered creates impact.
So in knowledge work, mastering this principle really requires distinguishing between an edit made to improve clarity and an edit made to soothe your own anxiety.
That is the key distinction. You have to recognize the point of diminishing returns, set a standard of functionally excellent, put the whetstone away, and just wield the blade.
Functionally excellent.
Oh.
I love that. And that distinction, editing for clarity, versus editing to soothe anxiety, that's a really profound pivot point.
It shifts the entire perspective.
It does, because it suggests that our failure to stop isn't just a problem of poor time management. It's actually a problem of emotional regulation.
Exactly. Which leads us directly into the second section of the text.
Yes, the philosophy moves so seamlessly from the external physical world to these internal psychological drivers.
The transition is brilliant.
The text states, chase after money and security, and your heart will never unclench.
This is a critical transition because the text identifies that the hoarding of resources, whether it's money, time, or status, is fundamentally driven by a physiological state of perceived threat.
A perceived threat. So that phrase, clenched heart, it's not merely poetic.
Not at all. It maps directly onto human neurobiology.
Oh, really? How does that work?
Well, when we are engaged in a relentless pursuit of security, we are actively triggering the sympathetic nervous system.
The fight or flight response.
Exactly. The brain perceives a lack of security as a literal existential threat. So the amygdala signals the hypothalamus, which then triggers the adrenal glands to release this whole cascade of cortisol and adrenaline.
So your heart rate actually literally elevates.
Your blood vessels constrict. Your entire body prepares to fight a predator or just run for your life.
But the predator isn't a tiger anymore. It's like the fear of not hitting a quarterly target or not having a large enough retirement portfolio.
Right. Our brains are reacting to a spreadsheet the exact same way they would react to a physical attack.
That is wild. The evolutionary mismatch there is just severe.
It's incredibly severe. Our threat detection systems evolved to handle acute short-term dangers. You escape the predator, the threat passes, and your parasympathetic nervous system engages.
To bring the body back to a state of rest and digest.
Exactly. The heart unclenches.
But when the threat is this nebulous, socially constructed concept like financial security...
The threat never passes.
Right, because the pursuit is chronic.
Which means the cortisol loop is continuous. And a chronically clenched heart leads to what we call allostatic load.
Allostatic load, what is that?
It's the physical wear and tear on the body caused by prolonged psychological stress. You literally damage your cardiovascular system, your immune system, and your cognitive function.
Okay, that sounds incredibly dark. And I have to interject here because there is a glaring socioeconomic reality that I think we need to address.
Please do.
This text was written thousands of years ago, right? But today, we live in a world with crushing inflation, skyrocketing housing costs, systemic inequality.
Very true.
So if someone is working 3 jobs and they're still struggling just to make rent, their heart is clenched because of actual material survival threats. They aren't chasing excess. They're literally just trying to survive. So suggesting that they simply need to, stop worrying about money feels a bit dismissive of very real systemic economic pressures.
That is an essential distinction to make, and it really highlights the danger of applying ancient philosophy without any contextual nuance.
Right, it can't just be a blanket statement.
Exactly. The text is not admonishing the person who is struggling for basic sustenance. It is critiquing the specific pathology of the chase.
The chase. Notice that operative word.
Yes. It is addressing the hedonic treadmill of accumulation. It speaks to the individual who has secured their basic needs, food, shelter, basic safety, but who continues to operate as if they are starving.
Oh, wow.
It's the belief that crossing the next financial threshold is what will finally provide that internal feeling of safety.
The moving goalpost. You think, if I just make $100,000, I'll be able to breathe.
And then you make $100,000.
Right, your lifestyle inflates, your peers change, and suddenly the new safety number is $250,000.
And the internal state of panic remains exactly the same regardless of the external metrics.
Because security isn't just a numerical value.
No, it is a psychological orientation. The philosophy argues for defining the concept of enough.
Which is so hard today. Capitalism basically conditions us to believe that enough is an illusion.
That infinite growth is the only valid trajectory.
Yes.
But dynamic balance requires recognizing when your actual material needs are met and consciously choosing to step off that treadmill.
You shift from a mindset of frantic acquisition to a mindset of stewardship and gratitude.
Because without defining enough, the heart remains perpetually clenched. It's unable to experience the present moment because it is always rehearsing future catastrophes.
That is such a powerful way to put it, rehearsing future catastrophes. And we apply that exact same toxic mindset of the chase to our physical health, too.
Oh, absolutely. The culture glorifies running on empty.
We lionize the CEO who only sleeps 4 hours a night. We treat sleep, recovery, and rest as, like, moral failings.
If you are exhausted, the modern solution isn't to rest.
No, it's to consume an energy drink, optimize your supplements, and just push through the pain. We treat our biology as an obstacle that we have to overcome by sheer willpower.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of human physiology.
Right. Let's examine athletic training, specifically muscle hypertrophy.
Yes, great example.
When a person lifts heavy weights, they are not actually building muscle in that moment.
No, they're creating microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. They are damaging the tissue.
Exactly. The actual growth, the strengthening of the muscle, only occurs during the recovery phase when the body is at rest, particularly during deep sleep.
If an athlete just lifted weights continuously without resting, their muscles would break down completely.
And the exact same mechanism applies to cognitive function.
It does. When we are frantically consuming information, answering emails, jumping between tasks, our brains are just in an acquisition phase.
Right. The intellectual synthesis, the actual connecting of dots, the generation of novel ideas forming long-term memory, that happens when the brain is idle.
It happens when you are walking without headphones, or taking a shower, or sleeping.
So pushing through exhaustion is basically analogous to filling the bowl until it spills over into clinical burnout.
Exactly. The philosophy of dynamic balance suggests that aggressive prioritization of recovery is not laziness. It is literally the most vital component of high performance.
You exert intense, focused effort, and then you purposefully, deliberately stop.
You allow the system to synthesize and repair.
Okay, so we exhaust ourselves hoarding financial security, and we break our bodies pushing past physical limits.
But there's a third arena.
Yes, and I think this is where the text cuts the absolute deepest for a modern audience, the pursuit of social security.
The hoarding of validation.
Exactly. The text states, care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner.
That is a heavy line.
It is. And we really have to talk about the evolutionary biology behind this, because caring what people think isn't just some character flaw.
No, it is hardwired into our species. It is entirely foundational to human survival.
Because for the vast majority of human history, we lived in these small, tight-knit tribes.
Right. And if you were ostracized from the tribe, if the group disapproved of you, it was not merely a social inconvenience.
It was a literal death sentence.
Yeah.
You could not survive the elements, hunt, or defend yourself alone.
Consequently, our brains evolved to interpret social rejection as a physical threat to our survival.
Right. The same pain centers in the brain light up for social rejection as they do for actual physical injury.
Exactly. Which explains why the modern environment is so incredibly toxic to our nervous systems.
We took that ancient life or death survival mechanism and we attached it to a global instantaneous network.
We carry devices in our pockets that quantify our social standing in real time.
It's terrifying when you think about it. We post a thought, an image, a piece of work, and we are subjected to immediate algorithmic evaluation by thousands of people.
And if the metric of approval falls short, our biology triggers a survival panic.
So to understand the psychological architecture of this, we need to look at Jeremy Bentham's concept of the panopticon.
Yes. So in the late 18th century, Bentham designed this institutional building, typically a prison.
The design was circular, right? With a central watchtower facing inward toward the cells along the perimeter.
Exactly. And the brilliant but incredibly insidious part of the design was that the watchtower was backlit.
Meaning the prisoners couldn't see into the tower.
Right. They never knew at any given moment if they were actually being observed by a guard.
And the uncertainty is the crucial mechanism there. Because they never knew if they were being watched, they just had to assume they were always being watched.
Precisely the point Michel Foucault made when he analyzed the panopticon later. The physical presence of the guard actually becomes unnecessary.
The prisoners internalize the gaze of the guard.
Yes. They police their own behavior because the psychological pressure of constant potential surveillance is overwhelming.
And social media, along with much of our modern corporate culture, operates as a digital panopticon.
But the wild twist is that we have voluntarily walked into the cells.
And handed the keys to the crowd. We constantly police our own thoughts, our aesthetics, our opinions, based on the anticipated reaction of an invisible, omnipresent audience.
We become completely reactive.
We lose our internal compass because we are solely navigating by the external temperature of the room.
And this ties directly into behavioral psychology, specifically B.F. Skinner and operant conditioning.
Oh, with the variable ratio schedules of reinforcement.
Exactly. The platforms use this perfectly. You pull the lever of posting content, and you don't know if you will get a massive payout of dopamine via likes and comments, or nothing at all.
And the unpredictability is what creates that profound behavioral addiction.
We are essentially rats pressing a lever, begging the crowd for our identity.
It's so bleak. The consequence of living in the digital panopticon is the complete erosion of autonomy.
When your self-worth is entirely predicated on external applause, you are a prisoner in the truest psychological sense.
Your emotional state is dictated by the whims of complete strangers.
But the source material offers a highly specific, very challenging antidote to this condition.
The practice of invisible work.
Yes, invisible work.
I'm trying to picture what invisible work actually looks like in a modern setting. Because the instruction is to execute something of high value, like a difficult project, an act of profound generosity, a significant personal milestone, and purposefully keep it a secret.
Right, you do not post it.
You don't bring it up in casual conversation. You just let it exist in total silence.
It sounds almost impossible, doesn't it?
The friction there is massive. I mean, in a high